Hey guys, welcome back. Over the past couple years, we have been testing out quite a few different types of chicken keeping methods, and today I'm going to talk about this one, all the good things and all the maybe not so good things. So some things to keep in mind if you are considering a chicken tractor. We built this chicken tractor for very, very cheap. The only piece of material that we actually purchased was this roof. So everything else was basically free. That's because we had leftover material, which may or may not be the case for you. But I'm going to take you through all the components, kind of with the understanding that we were somewhat limited in our materials list. So if you are buying materials for your chicken tractor, you can always, I guess, fine tune yours a little bit more than we did. So first things first, what is a chicken tractor? Honestly, I didn't look it up, but my understanding of a chicken tractor is just basically a chicken coop that you don't have to clean, because instead of the chickens leaving waste in one spot like they would in a stationary chicken coop, you are moving it periodically so that they're distributing their waste evenly, most ideally in a sort of garden or restorative type scenario. So where their chicken poop is actually going to help the soil a lot. So basically the structure of this chicken tractor is just kind of a large rectangle. A lot of people will have much taller chicken tractors, ones that they can walk into. That's totally fine. We didn't really feel that it was necessary because we have this to protect them mainly from the elements and for them to roost at night. But then outside of this chicken tractor, we are using electric poultry netting, which is really easy to... Sammy is really noisy, by the way, so she's probably gonna keep that up for this whole video. Hey, do you want a treat or something? So the electric poultry netting is really what keeps them safe from ground predators like raccoons, like coyotes, or neighborhood dogs, that kind of thing. As far as overhead predators go, ideally, usually we have like a rooster in here, or we're thinking about trying the goose thing, not sure yet, but some sort of bigger bird that protects against aerial predators in with these chickens. But then we can move this netting, and it allows them to have a much bigger roaming area, and it also means that we didn't have to build as big of a structure. So far it's been working out really well for us. No predator attacks so far, but I will keep you guys posted. The way we designed this chicken tractor, we did not intend for their food and water to be inside with them full time. We just kind of wanted something to keep them dry, keep them safe from aerial predators. If one does decide to venture in, they could run inside. But the food and water has to be covered outside. And that's just because we were trying to keep the structure lighter so that it's easier to move. A big problem with a lot of these chicken tractors is you'll notice it looks like a really cool, perfect design, and then you find out you need like some serious machinery to move the thing, which is not something that we have right now. So we wanted to keep the movable coop itself pretty small, and for that reason we didn't really leave specific room for food and water. We could put it in there if we had to, but we have to keep their food and water covered outside at this point in time. So that could be a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it. Another aspect to this coop that like I've said in my other videos, I will never go back to a manual chicken door again. Run Chicken did send us this one. We have also used the Chicken Guard. Chicken Guard sent us their automatic chicken door. It's just a game changer. You don't have to get up as early to let them out. I think it's better for the chickens because they are on a schedule that is the same as the sun. It's all solar, or actually, you know what? This one is not solar powered. I believe it has a battery, but it does have the light sensor. So it opens and shuts depending on the amount of light that is in the space. Whenever my husband and I are designing new chicken coops, this is always a non-negotiable. It has to have an automatic chicken door. So I linked some for you below as always, but highly recommend having one of those. One addition to this coop that we are really excited about that we haven't gotten to use before is the nest box that keeps the eggs clean. So basically, this nest box comes as a standalone nest box, and then you incorporate it into your coop. Basically, where the chickens lay the eggs is on a bit of an incline, so when they lay the egg rolls away from them so that they don't sit on the eggs. Honestly, you guys, it is huge because I had gotten so tired of dirty eggs. It really seemed like no matter how many times I cleaned the nest box, that eggs would just get dirty and yucky, and I just kind of got used to it. But the amazing thing about this nest box is it does keep those eggshells clean because it moves them away from the chickens and where the chickens poop, and then you can just pick up the eggs without even going in the coop or anything. So I honestly think I'm gonna make a whole separate video about that because I could go on about that one feature for a really long time because it is such a game changer. So I linked it for you guys below, but this is the first coop that we were able to incorporate it into. You do want to make sure that it fits because it is a pretty big nest box. So on some of our previous coops, that one of them I haven't even shown you guys yet, but it's just kind of a smaller coop and it didn't quite fit into that small coop. But this one we just made sure it would plug right in and it was good to go. As kind of another added layer of predator protection, we do have hardware cloth all along the outside. Now, obviously we didn't dig it into the ground because this is a mobile coop. It is meant to move from one place to another. Because there is no floor on this coop and it's just kind of sitting on the ground, I am aware that probably a ground predator could get in here if they really wanted to, but I like to think of protecting from predators in layers. So we have, you know, the rooster or the goose for the air protection predator layer. We have the electric netting for one layer on the outside. We have hardware cloth and wood construction for another. And really, to me, I sleep pretty well at night. I'm not really worried about this setup. I love the electric netting. I'll link that for you guys below too. But in case something managed to get past the electric netting and fumbled its way through and still had enough fight in it to try and go after the chickens, there'd be this hardware cloth there. It's not like they're just sitting there with nothing. So that's why we have this. We do really like having a coop that has a lot of airflow. That is so, so key. All of our coops in the past, because they've been physical structures, have limited airflow. This is really a summer coop. We're in Wisconsin, it gets very cold in the winter. So I would not use this coop, or I would certainly modify it in the winter because there isn't really any place to block drafts. But for the summer, I feel so much better with the hens sleeping in here as opposed to the coops where I've felt so bad so many nights when I go to shut them in and they're all panting. We've always had ventilation across the top in all of our coops and even had doors that we could switch out that had more ventilation too. But this is just a lot of airflow on all sides. It keeps them so much cooler on those really hot nights. And I really, really love that about this design. Additionally, we just have some 2x4s in there for roosts. Nothing really fancy. Like I mentioned, there is not a floor on this one. I'll go into that a little more in a second. But my husband just kind of put this big handle on the front. He put wheels on the back so that we can move it. And that's kind of where it is right now. So really, as far as coops go, this one is incredibly, incredibly simple. It offers some predator protection, but mostly it provides a place to sleep at night and it shields from the elements. Those are the biggest thing that this coop offers. And then really the electric netting is what defines their boundary. And then we move this as we need to. Like I mentioned, this is kind of this has just been in our like beta testing phase. So we don't have really the number of chickens. Right now we only have 3 chickens in here. And really we should have probably more like 15 to 20 at least if we wanted them eating down the weeds like they are supposed to. But if there's something wrong with it and if it's not gonna work, I definitely want to know that before we have a whole flock of chickens and something bad happens to them. So far so good. We got Sammy, I've been calling her Penny. She's a Welsummer, she's really cute. Honestly, we don't always name our chickens anymore. That's not like a principal thing, it's just life is so crazy now. And then we have this black chicken. I think she's a black copper Moran, I'm not positive, either that or an Australorp, but she is a pain in the butt because we had to chase her. She kept escaping. We had to chase her down. So she doesn't have a name because she's a little bit on her list. Don't tell her. Actually, I'm pretty sure she's pretty proud of that. I guess the other major component that I'll add, besides being super cheap, is it went up really quickly. My husband built this one in 1.5 days, which is a record. So a lot of the builds that we think are gonna be a weekend build end up taking weeks. So this one was really nice that it actually was as quick as we thought it was gonna be. It took him 1.5 days. Could have been 1 day, except that he had to run to the store and get the roofing. So it was really, really easy and quick to build, and I guess that's another pro that I'll mention for this design. You guys know we always just want to help with our experiences, so now I'm going to talk through some of the cons. I'm not going to hide them from you guys because there's some pretty decent ones. So, where to begin? Okay, number one, probably my biggest con for this design is access is not easy. So if I were to go back and do it again, I would probably have really recommended some sort of like open access to get in there. For example, when we first put this new nest box in, they weren't really sure how to get in there. We had to put some of their eggs in there and kind of train them to lay in there. And that was really difficult to do because it is not easy to access that area, because this is pretty much, other than lifting it up, which is really easy to access everything, this is the only way to get in and out. So as a side note, before I forget, that does make it harder for them theoretically to run away from air predators. So even though roosters are supposed to protect them from that, ideally I think this would be propped up so that they can really dash under there, especially if there's a bunch of them out here if they need to. But just for human access, I think adding a frame, adding a hinge would go a long way, or something to that effect. Maybe one of the doors on either side. The downside is that doing that would add more weight. Every single piece of wood adds significant weight, and it's already pretty heavy to move. You know, I like that it's heavy because it protects them more, but some of the lighter designs are a lot easier to move. So you gotta kind of pick and choose which one you want. Or getting a chicken who's in there and kind of interrupting your video with her egg call. That is really hard to do when this is the only door too. So, you know, access would be easier in that scenario. I would like more access, but I'm also probably not willing to trade off a heavier coop for it. So not sure what the answer is there really. Number 2 con is it is kind of a pain, in my opinion, to have when we're moving everything, moving all the electric netting, and we have the food and water under something separate, it's kind of a pain to move that shelter, move the food and water, move the coop. You know, it's just a lot of components. So it would be nice. I'm not sure if it is possible, but it would be nice if it all is in one. I've seen some of those chicken tractors have hanging food and water. They're really big. So that's probably the trade-off. It'd be a more expensive coop. It'd be bigger, probably heavier, but if it's not heavier, it's probably less protective because there's less material. So, but that's probably something I would be willing to compromise on there, because I don't really like all the different components every time we have to move the electric netting. Speaking of the electric netting, that's another con I should mention. Actually, no, I don't want to call it a con because it is great. You guys, I'm such a big proponent of electric netting, especially for ground predators like coyotes and dogs, because I know there's like there's cultural stuff, okay, where people like how people deal with these things, and I'm not here to start a culture war or anything, but I will say what I love about the electric netting is it gives them a warning. Like a lot of times dogs and coyotes, they don't know. They don't know that they're not supposed to go somewhere, and so they're gonna do it. They're looking for food or whatever. I'm not trying to stand on a soapbox here or anything, but I like to deal with predator issues with logic, right? So there are different scenarios where I believe the solution is different depending on the situation. But what I love about electric netting is it communicates to outside predators, this is not where you can go. Like, this is not cool. It provides more than just like a basic barrier. It provides some incentive, I guess, for them not to go there. And I love that. Same with livestock guardian dogs. I love that they communicate to outside predators, hey, like, don't come here, before just, you know, killing them on the spot when they had no idea that that was even a possibility. So again, there are a lot of different situations, and I know that people get really heated on this topic, so I'm not gonna stir it up. You can go to the Facebook Hive if you want to fight about that. But I love the electric netting because it communicates. That was a whole tangent. What I will say is it's not quite tall enough for a lot of chickens. A lot of people are surprised to learn that chickens can fly. They really can fly when they want to. And we had chickens fly right over. So we did clip their wings. I personally don't have a problem clipping chickens' wings. It's not painful for them if you know what you're doing. So it's like a haircut. So if you're gonna clip chickens' wings, make sure you look up how to do it first. But there were a couple chickens that we clipped their wings, this black one, and she's been safe ever since, because otherwise she would be out in that tree line where I'm telling you, it is not a good place for her out there. This is not where you want to be a roaming chicken on this property. That's all I'll say about that. I was just talking about the coyotes. We have a lot of them. So electric netting is doing a good job, wing clipping, keeping her safe, doesn't cause her pain. Let's move on. I think the last con that I'll mention is I actually don't love the way that it restores the soil as much as I thought I would. So a lot of regenerative agriculture channels are huge proponents of this method, and I love that. I mean, that's where we learned about it, right? I love that for whoever it works for. I find it's a little hard to control where we are restoring. So if we're working with big sort of blocks of land for, you know, garden or pasture and whatnot, and a lot of animals, I think this makes a lot of sense. For small backyard operations, I'm not sold that this would work so well. I'm not saying it doesn't work, and in fact, if you are in that kind of operation and you have a chicken tractor and it's working for you, please leave a comment below, because I never used it at our last property. We had too many chickens and too small of land. Now we have the opposite problem. We have too much land and not enough chickens. We could always get more, but we all have our threshold for the amount of work we want to take on, right? I don't know, I am not in love with how it's working. We had such good success with the deep litter method where we would just basically twice a year clean it out, and I mean it would take a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, but really, so I find we spend more time probably cumulatively moving everything than if we were just cleaning out the bedding. I will say the major advantage to this is that it does not use bedding, so you save a bunch of money on not having to buy bedding. You don't have to store the bedding. Honestly, another expense, another thing to buy, another thing to store, and another thing to stock. So that is what I like about this system, but I have already grown weary of moving electric poultry netting, so that's kind of why we haven't packed a bunch of chickens in this space yet, because I don't want to have to move them a bunch. Yeah, I don't know. Again, nitpicky stuff, but I want you guys to know that. I didn't want to act like this is all hunky-dory and it's this perfect system and, you know, use my links because everything works perfectly. I will always be honest with you people about, you know, the pros and the cons, so I want you to know that. The last thing that I'll say, kind of the con to this system, is I do wish that there was a floor to the coop, because it would be easier to move them after they roost for the night. Before letting them out, we would just cart them on over and then let them out in where the new fencing was set up. It'd be no big deal. This is a bit of a pain. It's not too much of a pain because our chickens are bucket trained, or trained to the bucket, or they come when we call them. I did a whole video on how to train chickens, so if you guys want to check that out, it's not hard to train chickens to come when you call them, but if you don't do it in some capacity, then they won't, and yeah, then you're in big trouble. So that's just what we do. They're very food motivated, but I do think it would just be a little less headache, a little less of a hassle if we just carted them over and let them out in their new clean enclosure and they got to work working on the weeds. I don't want this video to get too long, so I think I will leave it there with this coop. Again, probably the biggest game changer is number one, not having to use bedding and not having to clean out a coop, and number two, that nest box is huge, guys. Please check it out because it is a really cool family that makes these nest boxes in the first place, but also it is so nice to just have clean eggs. And they're not clean because I washed the bloom off, they're clean because they've never been soiled. So don't quote me on this, but I believe it helps prevent broody hens too, if you don't want that, because then you don't get piles of eggs that they're tempted to sit on. So a lot of reasons why we love this nest box, and those are just a few of them. Like I mentioned before, we're just kind of in the earlier stages of this system. We have various systems we're using that I haven't wanted to show you guys because we're just still working out the kinks on a lot of them, even from things like the PVC feeders and in the sides and, you know, stuff like that. We try to have done before we share it with you guys, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Sorry guys, I'm fighting a bit of a head cold right now, so thanks for soldiering through this kind of sinusy video with me. As always, we would love to get the discussion going in the comments. So if you use a chicken tractor, or if you don't use a chicken tractor, why do you use one? Why don't you use one? What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? And if you can relate to any of the things I mentioned, or if you disagree with them, we always love to hear it below. We will keep you posted as we continue to use this system. I linked the t-shirt for you below too. And otherwise, I think that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.